Welcome to another edition of Yoga Therapist. Where am I now? I'm Bob Butera, Director of Comprehensive Yoga Therapy. Happy to be with Melissa Fine. She is in Lambertville, New Jersey, which is on the border of Pennsylvania near the famous town of New Hope. She's the mother of three grown young men, wonderful kids. And Melissa finished her training in 2020 and has been exceedingly busy since. So we're going to start our discussion. We're going to end our discussion there with what she's doing with her yoga therapy. And just start, Melissa, let us know how yoga found you.
Sure. Okay. So part of my story, the main thing, I never stepped foot on a yoga mat until I was 43 years old. I had a very dear friend who was a yoga teacher, had her own small studio, and had encouraged me and then nudged me and then begged me, right, to come to a class, join her. And I resisted for a significant amount of time because I was too old. I was too chubby. I was not fit. I was not flexible, all of the things, right, that might keep someone off the mat. And I finally caved, I guess, and joined her in a class. And I loved it. And I was able to feel safe because she was my dear friend. So would I have done that in a studio of strangers without my safety net? Maybe no. But because I had that, I was able to embrace the experience and fell in love from that point. And I'll be 52 tomorrow. So it was nine years ago.
Wow. So what did you love about yoga so much specifically that led you to teach yoga?
I felt like I was really able to connect with my body in a way that I hadn't prior. I felt like I was maybe disconnected from my body. I wasn't happy with it. So it was easy to sort of dismiss it and not feel like connected. So yoga was able to give me that opportunity to really check in with my body, connect with it, embrace it, and actually appreciate and enjoy it. And then after I started practicing regularly, I noticed changes, both in my mindset, but also my physical body. So that sort of propelled me to the next step. And this dear friend encouraged me to start with a teacher training after really literally 3 months of practice. And I was not ready. But
so these changes happened in 3 months.
It started to, yeah, I really started to notice. I went once a week, and then within a really short period of time, I was there 3 times a week and just loved it. And I was never a workout exercise person. So obviously there was something different. This wasn't just exercise.
All right. So I told you I was going to interrupt you sometimes.
Yeah, all good.
All right, right there. I just loved it. Like, what are the top 3 things you loved? Like, for somebody newer, this would be for somebody newer to yoga, maybe, to hear.
Right. So I loved that it was my own thing and I wasn't competing. I didn't have to compare myself to someone else's progress or experience, which was a challenge because I definitely was like, oh, that person can do this better than me initially. But I was able to hone in on this being just about me and for me, which at the time my children were small. So that was a big deal.
Right.
I loved feeling, like I said, connected to my body, able to really say, okay, I'm stretching here. I'm making progress there. This feels like this, right? After being somewhat disconnected.
Right.
And I also enjoyed being with people who were having that similar experience.
Right. Making kind of new friends and such.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay. So you, in a very short time, you did this teacher's training that probably taught you a lot more about yoga in an intensive way, I guess.
Right. So it was oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
A little over a year later, I resisted the first one. I ended up enrolling the second time she asked, and I did a 6-week intensive for my 200-hour.
Pretty intense. Did you start teaching then, or was that just an entryway?
No, I did not. I really wasn't necessarily interested in teaching. I just wanted to really deepen the practice and learn. I was intrigued.
Mm.
I wanted to know. I had one teacher in particular who, Charity, who provided snippets into the bigger picture beyond asana, snippets into philosophy, bigger thinking, different ideas. And I loved her
Mm.
classes because that intrigued me so much. And that was
Mm.
one of the main reasons I decided to do the teacher training, to just dive deeper into those ideas.
So then fast forward a few years after that, you start getting interested in yoga therapy. And how did that occur?
Yes. So at the time I was in the hospitality industry. I had an unrelated, not yoga related injury. I had a meniscus tear in my knee and had to have surgery. And I decided if I had a million good steps left in that knee, I did not want to spend them running around a restaurant. So I was looking into some alternatives, stumbled across yoga therapy. Primarily, what I saw was really more related to physical therapy, which I wasn't necessarily interested in. Somehow I found you, scheduled our initial phone consult, and was completely hooked and interested and couldn't wait to get started from that point.
So go ahead. What interested you?
Well, I just love the idea of taking it again another level I wasn't really interested in teaching in a studio after just having my 200-hour certification, just because it felt limited and I just wanted to explore more and learn more. I didn't know where it was going to take me, but I figured it was going to take me somewhere interesting.
So then obviously, we cover all aspects of yoga philosophy and we apply them to your life and then it goes, like you said, there's the yoga mat part, yoga practices, and then there's the lifestyle part. So during that training time, couple years, of your life dedicated to that. When you were in the training, it was 3 years long. We've since stopped the summer break and made it into a 2-year course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. But like during those 3 years, what would be some of your pivotal experiences, your insights?
Oof, so many. So the first thing I remember being very impactful. So I don't know if you recall, but I actually started one weekend in. I missed the first weekend. I had connected with you shortly after that. And you said, well, the next one starts in 2 days or 3 days. Can you be there? And I said, yeah, I can be there. So everyone had already met and I was new. And I remember leaving after the first day feeling like I don't recall ever being in a room with this many people. That group happened to be all women, but not important. And really feeling like there was no ego in the room. Of course, there is, sure, but there was just such an authenticity and a connection, and everyone being there for a very genuine purpose. Right. So I don't know if it had to do with the vetting process. I don't know what, but I just felt like, woo. I anticipated being uncomfortable. I was nervous. I was apprehensive. It was a big comfort zone annihilator for me to walk into that space, knowing no one, never having been there before, and put myself out there like that. That was a big, big step for me. And I left the first day feeling like that was so easy and welcoming. Everyone was just welcoming and amazing. So that was huge. And from that point on, it just felt so comfortable and natural. And I also recall maybe a few months in not being a person who loves or jumps into group activities, right? Like, oh, what if I'm in a group with a person I don't like? Or what if someone's pushy or takes over the conversation? All of those things that never happened. And I felt like I could be placed into a group with any single person or combination of people in the space, and it would work and it would be great. And that's
Did
something. Go ahead.
So you learned a lot. Like we do a lot of peer conversations and activities.
Yes.
So you learned a lot in those situations.
I did, about others, about the topic, but also about myself, right? Like being open to that, not making assumptions, judgments about what working with a certain person might be like. And those moments, like the group discussions, small group projects, working on case studies, all of those things were potentially as impactful as some of the amazing, profound discussions and lectures from you guys, from all the teachers, because we were able to really just connect.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that worked the last 3 months on Zoom as well.
Right. So it sounds like you engaged with these bigger topics, and then it really sunk in when you had a chance to work it out and experiment with others. What would be an example of, say, one or two topics that you were? I mean, like you said, there's so many, because we cover like all these topics, from the chakras to the breathing to the meditation to psychology.
Yeah.
Nutrition.
Um,
Any fun ones come to mind?
Well, one that I was the most resistant to and ended up enjoying tremendously was the weekend we spent with Mark on Yoga Voice. I have been told from a very young age that I have a terrible voice. My kids would hide under the covers so I didn't sing to them. And that weekend with Mark happened to fall on my birthday. And I was dreading it, to be honest. And it ended up being really profound. And I loved it and have incorporated some of that into what I do now. So that was a big one. Let me
ask you, so the singing and chanting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that just flows now for you.
Yeah, sometimes I have to check in and remind myself of that weekend if I feel a little resistant.
Okay.
But yes, it was very profound. Changed my perception of that. That was
cool. That was a high point.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the work with Kristen on Yin was also really amazing. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint. I don't know. Working with Stefan, all of it.
So say for Yin yoga, what was interesting or helped pivotal for you with Yin? Like doing poses that you hold for 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, opens up the fascia.
Yeah, I think connecting the idea of the pose, like taking a Yin class is one thing, but being able to connect it back to all of the anatomy, the fascia, the intention behind it, and why it exists and why it works the way it does. All of the anatomy. I have turned into a bit of an anatomy geek and actually plan to retake anatomy and physiology, a college course, which I took 25 years ago, just look at it through this lens.
Interesting.
So, all of that was super fascinating. And also working with all Jen and all the science was amazing. It was all amazing.
Cool. So let's do that segment that I want to really get into. So each person ends up doing this yoga therapy differently when they complete this, learn how to work one-on-one with people, lead groups. What sort of things are you up to as a yoga therapist? Because I know you're really working hard on that.
Yes. So shortly after we completed our training in June of 2020, I started a little practice. I have my own office space, and it was kind of a slow start. Obviously, the world was in a strange place, and working with people one-on-one in person was a little challenging. But I was like a little steady engine plugging along. And then in September of 2021, my end of Lambertville flooded due to Hurricane Ida. So I lost my office. So I was out of my office for 5 months. So that was a little challenging. I had about 6 inches of water and lots of mud in my building. And I fared very well compared to many. So no complaints. And my building owner was able to jump on it and take things under control quickly. So last January, so just over a year ago, I was back into my space, again, plugging along, starting from scratch a little bit. And then a very well-established large local yoga studio, which was about maybe 100 yards from my office, relocated about 30 minutes up the river. And people were on Facebook, where is everyone doing their yoga? What's going on? We need yoga, blah, blah. And an acquaintance of mine posted a link to my website. which was incredibly generous and kind. However, I was not teaching classes. So it was a little bit of a problem. I then reached out to some of the commentators and ended up revamping my space slightly to be able to offer small, up to 5 participants, I'm calling them boutique style, gentle classes to kind of fill that void. So what happened while I was still also working with a handful of yoga therapy clients. So what came out of that was I attracted many, many, many of me, right? People who were 40 plus, maybe brand new to yoga, maybe had practiced in years past, but were dealing with an injury, a surgery, a knee replacement, all of the things, and were apprehensive for a variety of reasons to step foot into a traditional studio. So I now have a whole huge tribe of them, all me, 9 years ago in some way, shape, or form. And so I'm working with them, and it's kind of been able to be a nice blend of a more traditional class and then yoga therapy. So I'm able to be a little more personalized. I'm able to meet people where they are, provide them the safe space to really explore the possibility of what a yoga practice can do for them. And because I'm my own boss, my boss is pretty cool. I'm not limited by any constraints of a traditional studio. So I feel like throwing in some philosophy. I want to dig into a little more meditation, a little more breath work. I can do that. So I can really provide a wider scope of what yoga is to my little niche crew. And that's been amazing.
Fun. That's wonderful. When you do your one-on-one, when you've mentioned a few times, handful of clients, I meet these clients. What is yoga therapy when you work with people?
So
one-on-one.
my in terms of my goal, my primary goal in working with them is to really dig into what their goals are and what they're trying to accomplish with their health and wellness. So that has ranged over the short years from being physical issues like chronic sciatica problems, arthritis, into actually more common was an anxiety, stress, partially because of the state of the world and pandemic and whatnot. So I've been able to really hone in on those things, and then using all the tools I learned, figure out which path, which direction, where to go with that with them to find a way to set goals, set their SMART goals, and create space for them to work towards wellness with an open mind, really.
So what sort of things do they do? Like, what do they do with you? And then what do they do for homework?
Okay, so it varies. I guess there's obviously always movement, always some grounding to get started, checking in on what the previous week or 2 weeks has looked like in terms of SMART goal, in terms of how their life has maybe changed or been affected by their practice on the mat, how they've taken that off the mat. So a little discussion about that. Most recently, I have a new client that I've worked with only twice, and we dug in a little bit to her dosha, looking at ways that the weather and her diet and some of her other health issues are affecting her mindset. We also dug into some of the stress that she's been dealing with related to work and what that really looks like. Her goal initially was to feel better, right? So that's great, but it took a little work to kind of narrow that down to something a little more specific. We did some breath work. I worked with her on some breathing and then also some very minor stretches that she can do as a little break throughout her workday to reset and kind of decompress, release some of that stress, refocus. And after, so her job is very stressful and she doesn't love it. And what we discerned, what she's there for the insurance we came up with. So now she has a Post-it note on her computer reminding her that she's there for the insurance and that they don't get to control how she feels and the rest of her life.
So when you say you use this term, we dig into, sometimes
Mhm.
we say lean into. What I think you mean by that is you listen deeply to a person in a specific area that seems in need of support. Is that a good interpretation?
Yes, for sure. Yes. That's
Yeah.
what definitely listening skills. I've repeated to myself many times over the years that wait, why am I talking? Which I think you taught me at some point. To really hone in and listen and
Yeah.
give them space to unearth what really is happening, what's going on.
Right. So, like when you talk about finding a goal, you have to wait a while probably and listen deeply and help guide a person to find what their true goal is.
Right.
Maybe they
Yes.
start out like, I want to feel better, but who's ever asked me, well, what's better? Right.
Right.
And that sort of thing. Or what specifically is making you feel not better that we need to improve?
Right.
So you go through all that kind of process.
Sure. What does better look like? How would your body feel if you felt better? How would your day look if you felt better? How would your
Ooh,
relationships look if you felt better? So
nice.
all of those things. And then
Right.
really leave no stone unturned in terms of all of the lifestyle and behavior things, not just the physical movement, but what else?
Mm,
Drinking water, what does the nutrition end look like? How is the sleep?
mm,
All of the things, the relationships.
right. And have you, like, I still continue to be somewhat amazed how important that is and how people tell me nobody's ever asked me that. Do you get that?
I do. I do. I even find that in my small little group classes, things about just the physical body, like how does this particular pose or stretch feel? Right. And there people who I work with who have been in more traditional yoga class settings aren't accustomed to that interaction with the teacher, largely because the teacher doesn't have that luxury if it's a large group. Right. So just checking in, like, where are you feeling this? Or if we're in a certain stretch, do you feel this here, 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 or someplace else? I'm like, oh,
Right.
I never thought of that before. So
Right.
always the inquiry, always the student.
Yeah. And people are responding to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it's a certain it's a niche, I guess. There's a certain type of person, both as a yoga therapy client and as a student, who wants that, right? Looking for something a little deeper as opposed to more of a traditional asana class.
Right.
So
It's just like
they're
an
finding me.
exercise. Yeah, they're
Mhm.
finding you. And
Right.
then, so I guess before I say what do you see your future like, do you do seminars? I kind of remember you did like some events. Is that
Right.
a
So
part of your thing or mostly now just these classes?
yeah, so I've been done a few retreats. I did one solo way back, and then in a networking event, at a networking event, I met a health and wellness coach who focuses mainly on she focuses on self-love, mindset, self-care, a lot of things that have like line up. And then through her, I met another health and wellness coach who focuses more on the nutrition, the hydration, seasonal eating, fitness, those things. So the three of us have teamed up and we've hosted two retreats together so far, and we have a third one planned for April.
Nice.
That's been really fun, really, really cool, very enjoyable.
Nice.
It's a nice way to do something different, get my info out there, but also provides an additional income stream, which is, of course, also nice.
Yeah.
And really we kind of have cross pollinated with our attendees,
Mm-hmm.
that some of
Right.
Michelle's attendees are now taking my classes, and we've sort of shared the love. So that's been really, really fun.
That's great. That's great. So, obviously it's, so great to hear all this. Is there some future things that you're thinking about? And I don't, we didn't pre-plan this question, but I kind of know that you're very well put together. So I imagine there's some sort of some
honestly,
movement.
yeah, I don't know. I'm so enjoying what I'm doing. And I love, I've had a couple of students comment, well, you should get a bigger space and you could fill a
Mm.
class and I honestly, I love the fact that my overhead is manageable. I have a nice small space. I don't need to build out a staff. I can maintain my autonomy while still always learning and being in the space of others. Not like I have this definitive set way that's correct, but just being able to do my own thing and what feels intuitive in that space. So I'm kind of just digging what I'm doing for for the moment. I'm sure there'll be more, right? The girls and I are planning to do a longer overnight retreat, maybe in the summer.
Okay.
So that end will certainly grow, and maybe additional workshops. But the day to day, I'm loving it too much to change anything at the moment.
Okay. So this might kind of encroach my final question that I can't resist asking.
Okay.
So I love it, right? So everything worked out, you resisted yoga, you went to yoga, you did teacher's training, you did this yoga therapy training, and you overcame all that. And now you kind of love it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it? Maybe this will be our last kind of thing. What is it that you love? What are the things that you're loving?
So the biggest thing I think that I love, or that I know that I love, is being in service. So I feel like, although this is obviously a job and there's a financial business end to it, I feel like I'm offering to others what was a gift to me. So someone who's uncomfortable in a studio setting or resistant to the idea of yoga, I'm there to give that to them, which they may not otherwise have. So that's that gift. I've always been, even though I was in the hospitality industry, I spent years prior to that in social services. I've always been in that mindset, but this is a gift in the sense that I combine something that I love to do and that made a huge impact on my life. And I can then gift that to others who, if it weren't for me, might never have that experience.
That's special.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I imagine when you do, you have this nice, like triad, if you will. You have the little classes that allow that to occur. And then you have the one-on-ones, of course, where you can explore things more confidentially and privately with people and help them overcome barriers. And then you have that group retreat, which gives them a community feeling on a larger scale and a chance maybe to explore things. Like when we do retreats ourselves, I notice that it allows people to open up to really new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That on a bigger scale, maybe on a larger scale for them. So that's a wonderful offering. So it's great to see all this that you've been doing and accomplishing. I have a feeling there'll be more chapters to talk about.
I'm sure.
Is there anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I just think, I obviously look back fondly and missing everybody, and looking forward to hopefully connecting with everyone again in April. And obviously some universal force led me to you and to everyone associated with YogaLife, and it was a complete gift and a blessing and completely changed my life. And I'm forever grateful and glad that I can do my little part to pass on some of the wisdom that I was able to soak up in the presence of not just all the instructors, but also my co-students, my peers, and really teach and provide and give this gift away.
Beautiful. Well, that's great. We're really happy to hear your story, and keep it up, Melissa.
Great to connect with you. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm sure there could be a part 2 to this, and thank you for part 1.
My pleasure, and hopefully I'll get to see you in April.
You got it. All right.
Okay. Thanks, Bob.